I'm Brady Berserker.
I'm Big Sexy Brian Bales.
And I'm Metal Matson from Super Geeky Playdate,
a podcast member of the Gonna Geek Network.
Just like the show you're listening to now.
The opinions expressed are those of each individual host.
Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And get ready, because geekiness begins in
3, 2,
1.
You are listening to the Starling Tribune, a podcast dedicated to the Arrow TV show.
I am the Green Arrow.
This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, situations, and stories are the properties of Time Warner. I am the Oracle, and this is your Tribune.
Welcome back to Earth 2's favorite newspaper, the Starling Tribune. I'm the chief editor this week. My name is SP, and your other award-winning reporters for this episode number 212 of the Starling Tribune are Chris.
So, do any of these flashing screens actually do anything?
Come on, Damien. Focus. And Michelle.
Oh, hi, guys. I do hope you're not feeling all killy, stabby.
Except for when you stabby in the backy. This podcast is recorded on Thursday, October 4th, 2018, live on www.geeks.live.
That's right, and tonight we'll be discussing Legends of Tomorrow, as well as news, interviews, articles, and announcements that have dropped in the last week that could, and very well will, impact future episodes of Legends of Tomorrow, as well as the greater CW TV universe. So that includes The Flash, Supergirl, Arrow, Vixen, Constantine, God knows what else. They keep adding stuff, so it could be anything.
If you're new to the show, thank you for searching us out on the internet and joining us. After the show, you can check out our content at GonnaGeek.com, where you can also find other geeky videos, podcasts, and articles.
I love geeky stuff, but right now I love the geeky stuff in the terms of Legends of Tomorrow. So, Michelle, why don't you go ahead and break down the current episode for us?
This episode is called Guest Starring John Noble. It's Season 3, Episode 17. It originally aired Monday, April 2nd, 2018. It's directed by Ralph Hammaker, who has a total of 43 directing credits, including 28 episodes of Once Upon a Time, 3 Legends, and 6 Flash. It was written by Kido Shimizu, who's a producer on the show, and who has written 9 Legends, 11 Arrow, and 1 Flash, and James Egan, who's a supervising producer on Legends and has written 4 episodes of Legends.
Sounds like a really experienced crew, and definitely showed in this penultimate episode of Season 3 of Legends of Tomorrow. Talking about Season 3 of Legends of Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the ratings of the week that this came out, which Legends of Tomorrow came out Monday, the 2nd of April, 2018, with a live viewing plus 7-day DVR of 2.04. On Tuesday, the next day, the 3rd of April, there was no Flash episode, but there was a Black Lightning episode. This happened to be the 11th episode of the first season, titled Black Jesus, the Book of Crucifixion, to a total rating, again, this is live plus 7-day DVR, of 2.33 million. And on Thursday, Arrow with the 17th episode of the 6th season, with the episode titled Brothers in Arms, and I remember us railing against this episode in our review of it, to a total rating live plus 7-day DVR of 1.74. And judging by recalling what happened in that episode, that's not actually a bad rating for that specific episode, but they're ramping up for the big finale. So we'll see what that rating was next week. All right, guys, what do you think about these ratings for like penultimate episodes of the season for these things?
Hey, for Legends, a 2.04 is great, especially when the granddaddy of everything pulled a 1.74. Awesome sauce.
Yeah, and I mean, Arrow's still got, what, like 5 episodes left? Because it had, like, what, 22 or 23
Something
in its season? Yeah.
Yeah, they went into mid to late May with most of these shows. Supergirl, of course, went into June because it was splitting time with Black Lightning, was it, I think?
No, Legends.
Yeah, okay. So this is the penultimate with Legends. Tomorrow or next week will be the finale. So that will be the second week of April. And then Supergirl had to do the entire second half of their season after that, going into June. I don't think these ratings are bad. I mean, they could have been better. You're talking about spring break time frame, but hey, they are what they are. And this episode was great, especially with John Noble. It was great that John Noble is voicing Mollis, but is also getting to appear in the film, going back to his 1999 days in the trailer on the set of one of the Lords of the Rings movies that he was filming. Anyway, we're going to talk about the overall theme for the episode. Michelle, we often talk about the overall theme in terms of the title. I think the title was pretty good for a couple of reasons, but what do you think?
Well, like you said, SP, John Noble appears as himself. This is a very meta episode. John Noble voices Mollis. He appears as himself, so they can use him to imitate Mollis in order to get Nora to do what they want them to do. So very meta, and I loved it, as usual.
Legends can get away with this kind of stuff. It's just one of those cute moments that you sit back and you smile and you're like, yeah, John Noble's the voice. The title is literally guest starring John Noble, and they go and get him as himself, not as someone else. It's delightful. It's fun. That and having like Barack Obama show up this episode. Those are just fun things, and this is the only kind of show you can get away with, going from 1970s Barack Obama to John Noble in 1999, and it doesn't make you go, how the hell did they do this? It actually makes sense.
I love that they got the idea for going to John Noble because Mick is watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Maybe he just got tired of reading it, because remember, they were all shocked that he was reading the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so John Noble, every time I see him on the small screen, I think of Fringe. That was a great series in its entirety. I remember getting a little bit disjointed in the last couple of seasons when they were really just trying to pull something together on probably a reduced budget, but they really did it. And John Noble really did amazing stuff with that. John Noble might be up there with the likes of like Patrick Stewart and that type of caliber of actor. And it was really great seeing him on the screen and then remembering the Lord of the Rings too. And I thought he brought a certain gravitas. The whole Barry Obama thing, that was kind of hilarious, especially since Obamacare doesn't really exist anymore, but it was great remembering those days of Barack Obama.
Even Sarah's like, I'm going to miss you.
Hang on to that birth certificate.
That was a great line.
Oh, I loved it. Yes, that is where we start, basically. 1979, Occidental College. Gorilla Grodd is attacking a young Barack Obama, saying it's basically going to be an honor to kill him because our Legion of Doom is trying to break time in order to get Mollis free from the prison that is Nora. And they're thinking, hey, let's kill one of the most influential people that's happened, President Obama. It's an interesting idea and such, right, Chris?
It is. It was cute, and you can get away with it because of how things have changed. People could look back at that and be like, oh man, I understand where Sarah's coming from and things like that. But it was just a cool moment. Regardless of your stance of politics, you have to admit that Barack Obama is going to have a large part of history being the first African-American president and things like that. So it was cool to go back to Barack Obama before we knew him on stage as Senator and President Obama, but as college student, Barry Obama.
I'll have to hand it to the writers for the dialogue of this episode because it was both cheesy and it was kind of fun to listen to the first few minutes, especially when Ray's like, run, Barry, run.
I will say this also, the actor that had portrayed Barack Obama had his cadence down very well. Barack Obama has a very unique to him cadence that whenever he speaks you hear, and this actor did a very good job of using that same cadence.
Yeah, I loved it when Wally was thinking when they heard Barry was in trouble, he thought it was, Barry Allen and such. No, it just happens to be a future president.
That's right. No, not that Barry, this Barry, and then run, Barry, run. And then, of course, to complete the whole Barry Obama or Barack Obama thing, Sarah's having some trouble reconciling the fact that Damien Dark is still alive and still on her ship, and she's still not killing him. So she goes for somebody to counsel, and it is the young Barack Obama, who is really doing some great presidential level stuff. No, wait a minute. Excuse me. there's time travel involved, all that sort of stuff. But he keeps on going with the advice, and it's good advice. So that's great, except for then Sarah flashy things him probably one too many times, but she does.
Yeah, that is.
It worked out okay for the Men in Black in the past with those flashy things. They'll be fine.
Gotta love those flashy things. But yes, a big part of this episode is Damien Dark basically realizing the power of love and how it can redeem even the blackest of souls, such as himself. And he goes to the legends with the water totem, basically saying, this whole Mollis thing, if he comes out, my daughter dies, and I'm not really too happy about that. What do you think about him showing up, SP?
I think that this whole thing was going to happen the way it did. You were going to get Mollis coming out eventually, and the whole Grodd thing thrown in there. I think that was just Grodd was just thrown in there to kind of complete the circle that Grodd was another force to be dealt with. You're going to have multiple bosses to fight the big boss at the end, and that's where we're going here. So you have Damien Dark, you have Grodd, whereas before you had the Evil League of Evil last season. So you have this trifecta here between Nora/Mollis, Grodd, and Damien Dark that the team's going to have to take out. And it's looking like they're winning right now, and the team is not doing so hot at the end of the episode.
That's a good way of putting it. Things are pretty dire.
What do we think of Sarah's plan of freeing Mollis to beat Mollis?
Well, it's one way to do it. They have no idea how else to do it because he's a demon trapped in another realm who's using a body to channel himself into. So I kind of like it because I wouldn't have any other idea of how you would beat it unless you're going to get Constantine to open a gateway to hell, basically, or that hell dimension.
SP, what do you think of her plan?
The plan, okay, in typical Legends of Tomorrow fashion, you can see a lot of flaws in it, but they're like, okay, well, no, really, this could actually work. And it was kind of working until they got stabbed in the back by Damien.
Yeah, we had to expect that, though. You can't expect Damien to turn to a relief forever.
But they got the death totem back.
They did, and then it was stolen, and then they got it back again.
Right. Well, it was actually Sarah gave it to Damien, and then he misused it, and then she got it back. But I like the moment where because the big part of the time travel is 1992 Zambeze, and Amaya goes back in order to stop her village from being destroyed. And this is something that's come up over and over again ever since last season, basically, about her storyline, how she left 1942, and how we keep talking about she needs to go back because she needs to have kids and such. And Sarah was basically saying, what do we want to do? Do we want to go against our friend, or do we want to actually let her village be saved? And then that leads to Mollis coming out. So we get Mollis out that we could possibly kill, and Amaya gets to save her village. And now it's a 1-2 deal.
It's nice it all worked out that way, but I, for most of the season, have had a big issue with Amaya constantly wanting to go and change and talking about changing the past. I'm glad they could make it happen in a way that sort of made sense, but I always thought that was kind of a selfish move, especially after last season where she was like, the past is something I can't change, and now she was all about changing it. So they found a good way to allow her to change the past without ruining the premise of the show of being like, we can never change the past. We have to do it to let Mollis out. So it worked. It's a little hard to wrap your head around at first, though, mostly because of the constant, we must never mess with time.
Which is something Wally kept bringing up, because Wally and Nate are tasked with going to 1992 Zambeze and stopping Amaya. Nate, of course, can't because, well, Wally says he's whipped, but somebody else says he's in love. And they're like, well, it's the same thing, which I don't agree with. But he keeps bringing up Flashpoint. Wally has a great, things like, hey, I have been through this. Barry did this. It's called Flashpoint. It wasn't good.
Yeah, damn it, Barry. Absolutely. If anybody who was around to say this is a bad idea, Wally was kind of the perfect thing, because he's kind of new to the team. He hasn't been around all that long, and he's not made those emotional attachments to the rest of the crew. So if anybody is going to say, hey, wait, whoa, this is a bad idea, Time's not going to forgive us for this, and oh, by the way, look at what happened with Barry over there on the Flash, then of course it's going to be thing of moderation. So I did actually get that, where Wally was trying to be the voice of reason.
Yeah, who would think that the new guy to the ship is the one who's the voice of reason when it comes to the time travel stuff? But he has a very unique perspective, like you mentioned, because he's had to deal with the fallout of Barry Allen's poor decisions. And we can all probably figure there's going to be some fallout from the decision the Legends are making here as well.
But I love it when Rip said at the end, I think it's time for the chainsaw, which goes back to the beginning of the season, where he talks to Ava about how, yes, we are the scalpel, but the Legends are the chainsaw. And sometimes you need a chainsaw. And speaking of Rip and Ava, we actually finally get the confrontation. Last episode, we learned that Ava is a clone. And she learns that she's the 12th.
Yeah, man. Talk about destroying your view of yourself.
Yeah, so she's the 12th, right? So there have been 11 versions of Ava that have been taken by Rip to join the Time Bureau or whatever. And I guess he gets away with it because they're all basically the same. So there have been 11 sacrificial Avas out there. There have been 11 Avas that have died. Wow. That would be a kind of an amazing story to time travel and see what happened there. But that's going to be rough for this 12th Ava, and we'll just call her Ava. It's got to be rough for her knowing that she has been sacrificed, she has failed, and she wasn't the first choice. She was the second choice. She was the 12th choice out of all of this. Wow, that's got to be a hit to the ego.
I really wonder what it is in Rip's mind that makes her unique as the 12th one, makes her special. Is it the fact that she's still alive, or is there something about this instance of the Ava clone that makes her truly special compared to the other ones? Did she get more independent thought or something like that, or exceed the programming that he probably had to put into a clone to make it behave that way? I don't know. And I think they mentioned that at some point where he gets more insight into Ava's past in this upcoming season of Legends. But I'm really intrigued to see what it is that makes her so special in Rip's mind. And that's not meaning she's not. I just want to know what it is that makes him think that.
And it's heartbreaking because finally at the end, Sarah admits to Ava that she loves her. And Ava's like, there's no me to love. And I'm just like, no.
I mean, but I get where she's coming from, because her entire identity that she's built up for herself, it's gone. She probably could have lived with the fact that she's a clone if she was the only one. It would have been more difficult. But to find out you're the 12th, I don't know how you come back from that. I don't know what that would do to your worldview. And I don't know how any of us could put ourselves in those shoes, considering cloning, we're not there yet.
No, and there's been plenty of takes on the whole thing. Even Multiplicity was a different take on it. And that is actually a great example to use, because each version in Multiplicity was a separate, unique, distinct, and Ava's not. She's a clone. But the thing that she is really struggling with is, do I really have a soul? Am I a being on my own? And of course, she is. Of course, you've got Rip saying she is, but of course, Rip uses everything that he can in order to get what he wants. But Sarah comes in and says, no, you are special. And I think that helps a little bit. And of course, you have the big fight at the end of the penultimate episode here, and that whole thing is put on the back burner. But we're going to see a little bit more of it next episode as well.
So do you believe Rip when he says she's special, or do you think he's trying to play her to get her back in line? Because the way he was portraying it, it was as though there is something unique about her as this 12th version compared to the other ones. At least that's what I read into it. So maybe I'm reading too much into it.
It's so difficult with Rip Hunter, and Darville plays Rip Hunter so well. And it's really hard. Remember the whole time that he was courting Wally when Wally was meditating in the mountains with the monks up there and everything. I thought for the whole time that he just wanted to get Wally. He was just manipulating Wally. And yes, there was a facet of that, but there was a facet of Rip, who lost his family a couple of seasons ago, by the way. And you just get this feeling that he wants to bond with somebody at the same time. It's just really difficult when he's using people all the time as well. Now, remember, Mollis is a threat, and he is like the original captain of the Wave Rider, and basically what's left of the Time Lords that he had. And so he's trying to get a job done, and you got to acknowledge that. But just the manipulation factor, it kind of gives me a little skeevies and up and down my back, you know?
I mean, he's been manipulative since the pilot. He got everybody together and he told them that in the future they're these legends. I mean, he calls them legends of tomorrow, and then find out that basically they're just a bunch of misfits and people that, well, aren't really missed. And that's why he picked them, because taking them out of history really doesn't change history. So he's been basically a jerk since the beginning.
So to get back to your point, Chris, I don't know if I can completely believe him or not. I mean, it plays well on TV, and there is a redemption factor, right?
Right.
But yeah, I don't know if I can believe it.
I'm not sure how to believe it based off the way it's played, just because, like you guys mentioned, Rip is such a character that you never get a good read on, because you always feel like he's trying to push people into what it is that he needs to make the greater good. He's Dumbledorian, for lack of a better term. It's always about the greater good.
The truth is always there from a certain point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Obi-Wan. So, Chris, is there anything else about the episode you would like to talk about?
I enjoyed, we didn't get a ton of mixed stuff, but he's watching Lord of the Rings, which is fun. But I also, there's a moment where you get to see how much he respects Sarah now, because when Sarah's confronting Damien Dark, when he's got himself locked in the logos, the magic barrier or whatever, she's talking about how she wants to kill him, and he says something, he goes, "All right, boss," and holds his fire gun up and looks at her like, "Boss," and she's like, "Don't do it." And you're like, "Oh, cool." Mixed deferring as to, do you want me to flame this guy to death? Which he should have used the totem, not his gun, if he was going to do it.
Well, yeah, I guess, but there's always something about having somebody at gunpoint. And Mick Rory he's amazing. So whenever he's on the screen, he's had an amazing year.
Yes.
And an amazing couple of years, really, with what happened with him as Kronos. Remember, he's Kronos now. So he is hundreds, or if not thousands of years old. So it's great seeing where he's going. But your original point was the respect that he had for Sarah, because he was on it and then he was off of it as soon as Sarah said, "You're done." So it was good seeing that the team was coming together and that they respect Sarah as much as long as she's not being manipulated by Mollis herself.
And I also have to admit that I love the way Neil McDonough portrayed Damien Dark, especially in this episode. And I like the little moments of humor, and it sort of worked, especially when they're sitting there trying to draw the logos on the deck to be able to put them in this magical barrier. He's like, "You've got that upside down." "No, I don't. Here, let me fix that for you." And he uses his magic to flip it upside down where the barrier comes up. He goes, "See, that worked." And like, "Well, now try and choke me." He's like, "Really?" So there were some really good comedic moments with the byplay he had with the legends, and it was just a delight to watch.
Another thing that I want to say before we leave the episode for the week is Nora Dark. Oh my gosh. The way that she played it, she actually channeled John Noble into her being. If you take a look at her facial expressions as she's saying stuff, you can see John Noble in there, which was amazing. And you could see that being Mollis. So she did an amazing job right up to the point where she actually became Mollis. And then we will see next week if we ever actually see her again or not. But then Damien really wants to save her, and he doesn't. And you can see he's heartbroken when she becomes that demon of Mollis. And I don't know. I mean, Neil McDonough, I can side with and say, yeah, I see what you're going through. But Damien Dark, I'm sorry, I don't have that emotional bond with Damien Dark.
But I kind of see how Damien evolved here. And he even talks about it at this point in time. Like, he's always been dedicated to, I'm going to take over the world. I want to do this. And he sees what it not necessarily cost him in dying, but it cost his daughter by him dying and the position he put her in. So I kind of see his attempt at redemption in that regard of being like, I need to save my daughter. I don't care what happens to me. And it's kind of a nice evolution. It's been built over the season as he's been spending more and more time with his daughter and having these moments. And then the realization of, oh, crap. When all of this comes together, yes, we'll take over the world, the universe, whatnot, but my daughter's dead.
Yeah, this really kind of brings together what happened, what starts in with that episode in Berlin, where it's Ray, Nora, and Damien. And I think, that episode, at first you don't think much of it, but then when you see how Damien is, especially even with Sarah, with Sarah, he was like, I regret killing your sister. And you've gone from league to captain, killer to actually wanting to save people. And, love can make that happen.
Yeah. The other part in this that I wish we could have seen more, but I understand why we didn't because of time and everything. And a little bit of that was Nate and Amaya taking up too much time on screen. But anyway, Zari was coming up and she was doing the whole computer simulations with Gideon, trying to find out if there was a loophole or not. Wouldn't it have been great if we went back into Gideon's mind with Zari and had some of those loops going on all the time? I know there wasn't enough screen time, but I want more Amy Pemberton on my show.
Yeah, that'd been cool. One other thing I forgot to mention, and I promise I'll stop gushing about this episode because I really loved it, was Ray in Nora's ear, playing the recording. And the first one goes, it's really loud. She goes, he's so loud. And she's holding her ears. And I was like, okay, that's just funny.
And you see boop, 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 boop. He's actually reducing the volume on the suit speakers. That was great.
And I love the fact he's struggling with getting the recording started. So Damien's like, well, I don't know. And he's like giving all these nodding words to be like, come on, do it.
We don't know anything about that, do we, Chris? Trying to play bumps on podcasts.
Never. That would never happen.
I have to admit, I really enjoyed the scene where they actually got John Noble to do the recording. I actually worked on a film set, so seeing Ray do like the whole production assistant thing, and it's a studio note, which is very true. And then hearing John Noble's, I guess that's his real voice. I have no idea. I've heard so many different versions of him speaking. I guess that's it. And I love the joke about tell Peter no more chickens.
That was pretty good. I had 4 for breakfast. I think that's what he said. Oh, that was great. So in that scene, you had John Noble with Superman. I mean, how great is that? Let's not forget that is Superman. And because he played Superman in a movie once. And yeah, it was just fun watching them both together on a movie set outside of a trailer. And yeah, that was really fun.
It's just the fun of this show. So much quirky stuff that meshes together that shouldn't work, but it does because they just do it so well. I love it.
I know we do love it. And the love continues into the season finale, which is called The Good, the Bad, and the Cuddly. Again, a magnificent title. It's a play on a film called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And we're just going to gush all over it next week. So it's season 3, episode 18, originally aired Monday, April 9th, 2018. Rip is forced to improvise when the Legends' plan to vanquish Malice with the totems doesn't work. Directed by Dermot Downs and written by Mark Guggenheim and Phil Klemmer.
2 big daddies. All right. It's going to be fun next week. Meantime, I think it's time to get into some news. Live from the Starling Tribune main news desk on floor 52 of the Starling Tribune Tower, it's the weekly news roundup with award-winning chief news anchor Michelle Ely. And now, Michelle Ely.
Well, one of the things people have been keeping an eye on is Stephen Amell's facial hair, because we're relating his facial hair to plot. It's kind of like Game of Thrones, like when, did Jon Snow cut his hair or whatever. So, Chris, what's happened with Stephen Amell's beard?
That's right. We have an update for Beard Watch 2018. This update is Stephen Amell shaved his beard. He shared a side-by-side image of himself from an Arrow behind-the-scenes still, and another one that was apparently taken later that day, presumably offset. It was captioned Wednesday/Thursday. The big difference between the two is that Amell's beard is gone in the second image. During a recent interview with comicbook.com, Amell had said that when the beard was no longer absolutely essential for the show's storytelling, he would shave it down to a goatee and see how it looked. We were all hoping it'd be the Green Arrow style one from the comics, but evidently it didn't work because he shaved it off and we're back to just the scruff. So Beard Watch 2018's over. He's back to scruff, not full-blown beard.
Unless it's a prosthetic, which could be, but yeah, that's kind of sad for me. I was hoping for the goatee myself.
He had a pretty full beard. That'd be a heck of a prosthetic, I wager. I'm sure they can do it, but it sounds like it would be more convenient just to keep the beard if that was the case.
Well, true, but you could do a goatee prosthetic.
Yeah, fair point.
You mean you don't want to do a CGI facial thing like Justice League?
I never thought of that.
I didn't either, but I hope they don't do it because, yeah, that... R.I.P. Justice League.
Okay, moving on to some general DC news. And as we all know, if something happens with Constantine, Michelle's got to talk about it. Well, Constantine, the Legend Continues animated movie is going to air in October. So it's going to air October 15th, 9 p.m. Eastern. Following the movie's broadcast debut, cast and producers from DC's Legend of Tomorrow will discuss the upcoming season and give fans a sneak peek at season 4, which would debut the following week. So in case you haven't had a chance to buy the DVD and Blu-ray, you have a chance to watch it on CW and then get a sneak peek for Legend. So 2 for 1.
This is the perfect way to promote the next season of Legends of Tomorrow because you're going to have Constantine on. It's going to be a fun season. I mean, Matt Ryan, I know he was doing that Broadway stint for a while, but it's good to have him back on the show, and I can't wait for this at the end of the month. It's going to be a fun season with Legends of Tomorrow.
And Chris, you have our final piece of news about Legends of Tomorrow.
Yes, Phil Klemmer did a fairly extensive interview with The Hollywood Reporter and kind of broke down a lot of the season 4 changes and what was going on. So there's a few points to touch on, first of which being the larger theme. In the cases of the week that we have now, the Legends and the audience will discover that everything they think they knew about magical creatures and monsters is wrong. According to Klemmer, we are far more interested in finding nuance in these monsters and turning myths and legends on their heads. We are finding out what fairy tales got wrong about various magical creatures and monsters. Some of the ones that are supposed to be magical are murderous and vice versa. I like this idea personally. Twist things, give us more of what we don't expect and play with our expectations. Seems smart to me.
With a show that, in our opinions, is the best one out of the bunch for the CW shows, I just can't wait for them to bring in this aspect of it, because we've had the sci-fi, we've had the time travel, we've had cool treks through different eras of history and the future for that matter. But now to get more in depth into magic, which has been flirted with many of the shows, including Legends of Tomorrow, it's just going to be fun bringing that on.
Yeah, I think so too. And then don't worry, there's still more news. Next up, they talk about the crossover, which is something we've expressed some concerns on because we know Legends isn't involved. So Klemmer had said, I don't know how that's going to work. There's already a loose shape for it, even though this year's crossover isn't done by a long shot. I was happy to have it to sit out this year because we only have 16, and our run of episodes was so tight and integrated. It's always a blast, but it's a departure. I'm glad we get to do a straight run this year. So looking on the bright side of life, I guess.
16, which is 2 less than this year. I don't like that.
But if it is done with a tight story and you don't get filler episodes, I think it could be awesome. Because remember, some of those 13 episode runs of British shows are awesome because there's not filler. So it's all meaty. It's all good story.
Yeah, even a 6 episode season can be great. I mean, I keep going back to it because it's the hallmark, but Walking Dead, the first season was 6 episodes, and that turned out to be an amazing series for a while, at least, until some of us got sick of it. But yeah, if you can get out I will agree. So 16 episodes, probably with their CGI budget and probably with their more advanced crew that they have to pay throughout the entire season. I can see, because this is the fourth season, and some of these characters have been on for quite a while, like Sarah Lance. Katie Lotz have been on for more than just the 4 seasons of Legends of Tomorrow. So I don't know how that works contractually, but you got to say this is an expensive show to make. And if they have to cut one episode and cut out some of those storylines, I'll be happy with it. We'll see what it's going to be like next, whatever, January, February, if we're still enthralled with it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with it because remember, short runs can work. How long is the first couple seasons of Sherlock? They're like, what, 5 episodes each or something like that?
Oh, no. Yeah, like the British version of Sherlock, it was actually 3. It was like 2-hour movies or an hour and a half. So it was basically 2 episodes in one, but they only had 3 for those first few series. That's what they call it.
It can work. I'm not going to get broken up and sad over 16. They can make it work. And then finally, about the future, we virtually changed genres over the course of 4 seasons, according to Clemmer. But the 1-hour comedy is something I've always loved doing, and the fact the show is organically turned into one surprised me. Maybe we'll go back to being a hardcore, super serious, straight CBS procedural by the time we get to season 6. Nobody's making demands of us. Nobody is saying no to us, studio or network. So we're willfully wacky, odd, and out of step with everything else on TV. And to that I say, hooray, keep at it, because that's what makes this so much fun. He's totally nailed it there.
We love the crazy. We do.
We do. And I don't know, I'm going to have to talk to Josh Liston over on the Bubble podcast. It's another podcast on the Gonna Geek Network. If this show would have to go through a fan-saving campaign, because he's talked about some really creative ones, I wonder what it would be for the Legends of Tomorrow. We'll have to think about that and come back with that, because who knows what's going to happen at the end of this year, but we definitely want this show to come back.
Yes, very much.
Oh gosh, definitely. Now my brain is working. Like, what would we do?
We would totally promote whatever that was on this show. We might even have a special episode if there was a Save Legends of Tomorrow campaign out there, which we're not in that position right now, by the way, but we're just thinking eventually it might happen. So we got to get our contingency plans in place.
Exactly. Plan for the best, plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Yes, I love Legends. I guess that's why I want more. I do wish other series would be willing to do like, hey, we really only have a story for like 20 episodes. Can we just have 20 episodes and not do 3 filler, or, have a nice tight 18 or something like that? It's one of the things I like about like the Netflix shows, that 13 makes them kind of tight.
Yeah, but it's not just the number of episodes, it's how you air them. Like, you can't take half a year off and then come back unless your series has a definite break point, and then you can wait for half a year and then come back like some of the other series out there do. But I don't think that would work for Legends of Tomorrow. I think we got to go more or less from front to back with minimal breaks.
Well, I agree. I'm just saying, like, perhaps like if Arrow is, we've talked about how sometimes we don't like it when Arrow has those obvious filler episodes, and how it would be nice that, hey, give us a good straight 18 episode run of Arrow or something. But yeah, like I get Vikings they divide their seasons up in 2, but it's a natural break. It almost feels like another season instead of like 4A or 4B.
Yeah, that is a great example. The Vikings series on the History Channel, another phenomenal series. It's probably my favorite series for that long, really in-depth, filmed on location sort of series right now. And I can't wait for it to come back. I was almost waning from it when Lothbrok, what was his name? The lead character for the first few seasons? Ragnar.
Lothbrok.
Yeah, Ragnar. When Ragnar left, I thought, that's going to be the end of the show. Oh, no. They eventually reinvented it, and it's done very well. So, yeah, I agree. Vikings is a great example of how to do it right. Again, I'm not sure it can be done with one of these CW shows, though.
I think it can. But that's one of the beautiful things about having a podcast and being on a podcast. We could talk about these things in depth, and it's so much fun. And we are part of a bigger network of other podcasts where podcasters come and they have fun talking about other stuff. So, Chris, what is a podcast on our network?
So we always like to highlight one episode, or one show rather, because there's 25 plus shows in the network. We can't highlight them all because that's a podcast in and of itself. But I'm glad that SP had mentioned Josh Liston in the On the Bubble podcast, because that's what I want to talk about. Specifically, episode 28, their Expanse episode entitled The Expanse, Ariel hashtag Save the Expanse banners, coffee bags, 50,000 upvotes, and more. And I know, SP, you're a big fan of The Expanse, so I'm sure you've probably already listened to it. But for those of our listeners that haven't, here's what it's all about. From coffee bags and 3D videos to model rockets and 50,000 upvotes, the Expanse fan campaign is one of the most intense fan campaigns in recent memory. In this episode of On the Bubble podcast, we take a look at the explosive fan campaign for the acclaimed sci-fi drama, The Expanse.
And if you go listen to that episode, once again, it's The Expanse episode number 28, you might hear a couple of familiar voices on the episode.
That's right, you might. So go check that out and all the other great podcasts on the Gonna Geek Network. Head on over to GonnaGeek.com, click on the network button, and you'll see all the great shows that we have there. However, all that being said, looking at the time, it is time for us to start wrapping up this episode of the Starling Tribune. A big thank you to everyone who participated in the live chat room over on Geeks.live, but also a thank you to everyone who downloads the video replays over at youtube.com/GonnaGeek, or who downloads the audio podcast from StarlingTribune.com.
If you happen to have an Amazon device, you can always enable our podcast as a skill. Just say your activation word and say enable Starling Tribune podcast, and that will come up as a skill. And remember, you can always catch us live as we record at www.geeks.live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific on Thursdays. And we are now also streaming on Periscope. Thank you for everybody who has been joining us on Periscope.
We would love to hear from you. We're the Starling Tribune on Facebook and Instagram, at Starling Tribune on Twitter, and you can call us at 612-888-CAVE. That's 612-888-2283. Well, this brings us to the end of another great episode. Any last words before we sign off? At Stargate Pioneer.
Hashtag Obamacare.
At the Chris Farrell.
Hashtag Wrongberry.
And I am at Michelle Ely, signing off with hashtag chickens for breakfast. Oracle, I think we're done here.
This was the Starling Tribune. You can leave us feedback at GonnaGeek.com or check out our archive at StarlingTribune.com. Visit GonnaGeek.com for more podcasts. Music by Kevin MacLeod can be found at Incompetech.com. This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, stories, and situations are the property of Time Warner. No infringement is intended. We will see you for the next episode of CW's Arrow.